man. Continue.
I've been there. Like, sometimes the basket is too open. Right. She's used to getting double teamed. She's used to triple teams, and she's used to contact. And so sometimes when you see her, like, wait, what's coming? You want to look over your shoulder. But
hold on, Shanae. Hey, you only can say that about players who are too open shooting the three. Not right at the rim, dog. Come on, man. We don't say that for players right at the rim. Only when you're shooting threes, man. Sometimes you are too open when you shoot a three.
Wait a second. Too open at the rim? That explanation right there is exactly why this whole halftime conversation became more entertaining than the game itself. Because once you hear the excuses they were making, you start wondering where analysis ends and protection begins.
Plays, you see Caitlin orchestrating. It's like both sides are leaning into their strengths on this one.
Let's go back to Angel really quickly, though, because she was part of the catalyst that you saw to be able to change things around. And she said to Holly, I just feel like I needed to take a deep breath and maybe stop overthinking some of these.
Oh, I've been there.
Before Shanae answered, y'all saw how Shanae was like, how Malika just jumped in mid-conversation with her mid-talking. And say, yeah, but let's get back.
And notice how quickly the conversation changes. Caitlin Clark gets mentioned for orchestrating Indiana's offense, and almost immediately the panel swings right back to Angel Reese. Now that alone does not prove some grand conspiracy. Halftime shows pick storylines. Producers want recognizable players. Reese is one of the biggest names in the league, so obviously she is going to get airtime. But the problem is what they were trying to sell while doing it. The first half story they were describing, and the first half basketball people were watching, did not completely match. Reese had 7 points and 9 rebounds, so there were productive things to discuss. The rebounding was absolutely there. The activity was there. You could even argue her energy helped Atlanta settle down. But once you start explaining missed shots at point-blank range by saying a player might actually be too open, now people are going to start laughing. And there is another moment coming where this gets even harder to defend, because the broadcast itself admits something about those misses that clashes directly with what happened on the floor.
As well.
But it's actually Indiana that has 7 points off of the turnovers that Atlanta has created until we saw Angel Reese, shout out to our teammate, Angel Reese in particular, her energy shifted. I thought when she got some of those easy baskets to go in the paint that quite frankly she had struggled with to open the ball game, that's when you saw this defense begin to pick up its energy, this dream squad to begin to play with a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, athletes know it's not how you start, it's how you finish, and that energy is contagious because if you look at Angel Reese, she already has 7 and 9. She's already getting close to a double.
This is where the framing starts. Listen carefully to the language. Her energy shifted the game. She got some easy baskets. Atlanta began playing with more confidence. 7 and 9, already approaching a double-double. None of those statements are automatically ridiculous. Reese's value on the glass is real. If you want to praise her rebounding, praise it. If you want to point out that Atlanta responded once she finally converted inside, that is a legitimate basketball observation. What people are reacting to is how aggressively the positives are being searched for while the most obvious negative is sitting right there on the screen. A post player getting repeated chances around the basket is supposed to finish a decent percentage of them. That is not some outrageous standard invented specifically for Angel Reese. That is basic basketball. Bigs get judged on touch, footwork, finishing through contact, finishing before the contact arrives, and turning offensive rebounds into points. So if the same player is missing multiple close looks, you can acknowledge the rebounds and still say, she has to finish these. Both things can be true. That is what good analysis sounds like. Instead, we got this strange gymnastics routine, where an open basket became almost a disadvantage. And that is why the reaction exploded, because viewers know how differently a rough shooting half gets discussed depending on whose name is attached to it.
The game started and Angel Reese was missing some of those bunnies. We were all talking about it and I was like, she's not missing these because of Indiana's defense and she's getting these layups, so that was a good sign. Even though she wasn't finishing them, then she's able to finish some of them and then Atlanta goes on a run. The person I want to give credit for is while Atlanta was struggling, Alicia Gray was holding it down.
But it...
Fam, she said Angel Reese was not missing because of the Indiana Fever's defense. Fam, she was blocked 3 times. She was blocked 3 times in the first half.
And there it is. She's not missing these because of Indiana's defense. Except the criticism from the host is that Reese had already been blocked multiple times. That matters because now we are not arguing about whether somebody likes Angel Reese or dislikes Angel Reese. We are talking about whether the description matches the actual possessions. If a defender gets a hand on the basketball and prevents the shot from reaching the rim, that is defense. You can still say Reese created opportunities. You can still say she needed to finish other open chances. But wiping Indiana's defense out of the equation creates a completely different story. And this is where the Caitlin Clark comparison becomes unavoidable. Imagine Clark starts a game 3 for 10. Some of those attempts are contested threes, maybe a pull-up from 27 feet, maybe a difficult drive at the end of the shot clock. Does anybody seriously believe the halftime conversation would become, actually, she might be struggling because she's too open? Of course not. They would talk about shot selection. They would talk about efficiency. They would ask whether she was forcing things. They might show every miss in a montage, and that would be fair. Stars get scrutinized. The bigger you become, the less protection you should need from basic basketball criticism. Reese is famous enough, accomplished enough, and important enough to the league that she does not need analysts inventing softer standards around her. If anything, treating her like a serious star means judging her performance seriously. That distinction is important, because there is plenty she deserves credit for without pretending every part of the game was good.
See how some of these players get the big-time performance label, right? When they have a mediocre game, man, like, keep it a grand. Keep it a grand, dog. Angel Reese shot 31% from right under the rim. All right? 31%. Come on, dog. Like, but they said big-time performance. They putting her with Alicia Gray. Honestly, they should have been talking about Alicia Gray the entire time. Alicia Gray and Caitlin. They should have been talking about both.
31% near the basket is where the frustration comes from. And notice who gets dragged into this comparison. Alicia Gray. That is the performance the discussion should have centered far more heavily. Gray was producing while Atlanta needed somebody to keep them afloat. If one player is actually carrying the scoring load, and another is piling up rebounds while struggling badly to convert, those are different performances. A graphic or segment that lumps them together under some broad, big-time performance label flattens the game into name recognition. That is not analysis, that is branding. And branding is where this becomes bigger than one halftime show. The WNBA is in an era where individual players drive enormous amounts of attention. Clark has one audience, Reese has another, Paige Buckers has another. A'ja Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, Nafisa Collier, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, and others all create different conversations. That attention is valuable, but it creates a temptation for broadcasts to protect the storyline instead of following the basketball. If the planned story is Angel Reese changes the game with her energy, then suddenly every rebound fits the package, every made basket becomes evidence, and every miss needs an explanation. But sports are compelling because they refuse to follow the script. Sometimes the superstar plays badly. Sometimes the player you barely mentioned in the pregame show becomes the reason a team survives. Sometimes the best storyline is simply that the expected star did one thing extremely well and another thing poorly. There is nothing wrong with saying that. In fact, fans trust you more when you do.
But she settled into the game well, and what I like is she's been such a great mentor also to Medina Okot. I believe Medina Okot has 6 points, 6 rebounds as well. There's no one better to learn from when it comes to being a beast on the boards than Angel Reese.
Yeah, because
I'm glad she went rebounding, all right? Because I would give Angel that. She is a great rebounder, but, man, when it comes to scoring,
That part is the version of the conversation that actually makes sense. Angel Reese as a rebounder? Absolutely. If you are teaching a young frontcourt player how to pursue the basketball, stay active after the first shot, read caroms, and generate extra possessions, Reese gives you plenty to study. And that is exactly why the scoring excuses are unnecessary. You do not have to turn her into something she is not to explain why she matters. There is a weird habit in sports media where criticizing one skill gets treated like rejecting the entire player. It is the same thing we see with Clark. Mention her turnovers, and somebody acts like you said she cannot play. Mention Reese's finishing, and somebody acts like you dismissed her rebounding. That is fan war thinking. Actual analysis separates skills. Reese can be an elite rebounder while still needing more reliable touch around the basket. Clark can be an elite playmaker while still having possessions where she forces the issue. Kelsey Mitchell can be a lethal scorer and still have rough shooting stretches. Every star has strengths and flaws. The minute analysts become afraid to name the flaw because they think a fan base will get angry, the broadcast gets less useful. And unfortunately for everybody involved, the second half gave people several more things to argue about besides the commentary.
They were throwing life jackets out there for the Atlanta Dream. Throwing life jackets out there for them, man. Trying to make sure they stay in this game. They literally called this a foul. Fever challenged, and they still lost. Like, I'm like, yo, what in the world? Where's the foul? I mean, Caitlin Clark literally barely just touching Ryan Howard on the back, and they're calling that a foul. Like, are you kidding me? She's fading to the side on her.
Now we move from broadcasting to officiating. This is the kind of call that drives fans insane, because the replay does not magically settle the argument. Indiana challenged it and still lost the challenge, which only intensified the reaction. From the host's perspective, Clark barely had contact on Ryan Howard's back, while Howard was already moving sideways. Officials obviously saw enough contact to keep the foul, and that distinction matters. We can disagree with the call without pretending we know exactly what an official saw from his angle. But this is also where consistency becomes everything. Fans will tolerate a tight whistle if it stays tight. They will tolerate a physical game if everybody gets to play physically. What makes people furious is watching one possession get interpreted as marginal contact, deserving a whistle, then seeing a much harder hit at the other end disappear. That is why isolated clips rarely stay isolated anymore. Fans immediately start building a case. They go backward through the game, find the previous possession, compare body contact, freeze frames, slow everything down, and ask one question, where is the line? And the next sequence made that question even louder.
Her own. Then we had Ryan come behind after the call, after the challenge was unsuccessful, and try to make sense of how Ryan Howard kicked Caitlin's inner thigh and called that a foul on her. That does not make any sense, Ryan. Like, come on, man. Come on, man. She was fading to the side on her own. Then he's talking about that little kick to the leg right there. Like, dog, stop it, man.
That is the difficulty with these shooting fouls. The offensive player's leg movement, the defender's position, the direction of the shooter's momentum, and the timing of contact can all matter. From the reaction we just heard, the argument is that Howard's movement created the contact rather than Clark displacing her. Whether you agree with that interpretation or not, the challenge failing means Indiana had to live with it. But keep this moment in mind, because the real reason the officiating becomes part of the bigger story is not that one whistle went against Indiana. It is what happened when the contact became far more obvious.
Angel put the hand to the throat on Caitlin. I don't know what Angel got going on, man, but she's been having some crazy plays. She's been looking like Dejanay lately. She's been looking like Dejanay. She's been slapping people, throat chopping. Look at this. Right in the throat, throws Caitlin back, going for the rebound. And Caitlin like, dang, man, y'all gonna call that? Look, she's like, what in the? She hit me in the throat. Look, watch. Hitting her in the throat, dog. Like, what?
And there is the play everybody is going to freeze. Reese's arm comes across as she is battling for the rebound, and Clark immediately reacts as though she was hit around the throat or upper chest. Now this is where commentary has to stay disciplined. Slow motion can make ordinary basketball contact look more sinister than it was in real time. Players are fighting for position. Arms are moving. Bodies collide. Not every ugly frame means somebody intentionally tried to hurt somebody. So I would not jump from that clip to claiming intent. But I will say this, if the officials are going to call marginal contact tightly on one end, then a swing across the neck area deserves a very close look on the other. That is the consistency problem again. And it is especially sensitive because Clark and Reese already carry so much history into every matchup. Every bump becomes a headline. Every facial expression becomes a meme. Every hard foul turns into a referendum on whether one side is being protected. The officials cannot control that noise. What they can control is making the standard as predictable as possible. Because once fans believe the whistle is changing depending on the player, the entire game starts getting interpreted through suspicion. And that suspicion gets even worse when something procedural happens that looks impossible to explain.
31 seconds on the clock. We had Kelsey Mitchell come out of her shoes, right? We had Kelsey Mitchell come out of her shoes. Stephanie White literally turned into another color, running down the floor trying to call timeout. Watch this. She comes now. I don't have it in this angle, but right here at this moment, Stephanie White is literally sprinting down the floor, calling timeout. She's trying to call timeout. None of the refs are paying attention to it. 6 seconds on the clock. They waited until she had the Indiana Fever had 4 seconds on the clock to call the timeout.
This might actually be one of the more frustrating moments because it is not about interpreting contact at all. Stephanie White is trying to get a timeout. Kelsey Mitchell has lost a shoe. The coach is moving down the sideline, trying to get the officials' attention, and according to the host's breakdown, the timeout does not get recognized until precious seconds have disappeared from the possession. That is the kind of sequence coaches lose their minds over, because there is no strategic solution to an official simply not seeing you. And imagine how different the conversation becomes if Indiana turns that possession over or fails to get a shot because the timeout arrives too late. One tiny procedural miss becomes a major game moment. That is why officiating criticism should focus less on the refs wanted this team to win and more on concrete sequences like this. Did the coach signal? When did she signal? Which official was responsible for recognizing it? How much time elapsed? Those are answerable questions. Saying officials were deliberately trying to hand Atlanta the game is a much bigger accusation, and there is no evidence in this transcript proving that. But saying Indiana had legitimate reasons to be frustrated with specific calls and specific moments, there is clearly plenty to discuss. And then came another physical play at the end that made the whole game feel even more combustible.
Angel Reese throws an elbow at Aaliyah Boston. Look at this. And Aaliyah Boston couldn't even react because if she did, game over, right? Game over. Look at this. Boom. An elbow to the throat right here. Look at this. Oh, my goodness. It might have hit her armpit, but, man, that looked like it's going right at her throat right there. Aaliyah Boston doesn't even react.
Again, look at the difference between what we can see and what we can prove. Reese's elbow comes up while she and Aaliyah Boston are fighting for the rebound. The contact looks high. Boston does not retaliate. The possession continues, and everybody avoids turning the final seconds into something much uglier. Can we say from that clip alone, Reese intentionally targeted Boston's throat? No. Can we say the play looked dangerous enough that people are going to question why it was not treated more seriously? Absolutely. And this is the late-game payoff to everything that came before it. The reason the halftime defense of Reese sounded so strange is that viewers were not watching a clean, dominant offensive performance that needed somebody to explain its greatness. They were watching a complicated game. She rebounded. She created extra possessions. She struggled finishing. She got blocked. She eventually converted some opportunities. She was involved in physical sequences. Those are all parts of the same performance. The broadcast did not need to erase half of that picture to make the other half look better. That is the real double standard people are reacting to. It is not simply, they praised Angel Reese. Good players get praised all the time. It is the sense that when Reese struggles, the conversation sometimes searches for reasons the struggle should not count against her, while Clark's bad stretches are more readily framed as mistakes she needs to own. And if you are an Angel Reese fan, that type of coverage should bother you too, because soft analysis eventually becomes disrespectful. If every missed bunny needs an excuse, what are you saying about the player? That normal expectations cannot apply to her. Reese herself does not appear to need that protection. The transcript says she acknowledged in her interview that she had not been playing well. That is what competitors do. They know when they are off. So if the player can admit it, why should the broadcast be afraid to?
But no, I had to bring this up, man, because this had me dying laughing this morning, dog. There's no way y'all was sitting here trying to cover for Angel Reese not performing well. I don't understand it. Even Angel came to the interview and said, I was playing like S. And y'all sitting here trying to act like she was just the best.
That is the part I keep coming back to. If Angel Reese can essentially acknowledge that she had to settle herself down and improve, then straightforward criticism is not some attack on her. It is basketball. And that brings us back to the too open explanation, because now you can finally see why that sentence became the perfect symbol for the whole controversy. It was not just one awkward line. It represented the lengths commentators sometimes go to preserve a preferred narrative. When Clark has a rough stretch, nobody needs to tell us the basket was too available. They say she missed. When Mitchell goes cold, they say she is struggling. When Boston fails to convert inside, they talk about finishing. That same vocabulary should apply to Reese. Because equality in sports coverage does not mean praising everybody equally. It means evaluating everybody honestly. Maybe one night Clark is brilliant and Reese is inefficient. Maybe another night Reese dominates the glass and Clark turns it over 8 times. Maybe Alicia Gray is the best player on the court while the two names dominating social media are doing something less spectacular. Follow the game. That is all fans are asking for. And there is another reason this matters now more than ever. These broadcasts are feeding a rivalry culture that is already overheated. Clark and Reese do not need announcers manufacturing additional conflict around them. The basketball has enough history, enough contrasting styles, and enough fan investment on its own. Clark's game is built around creation, shooting gravity, passing angles, and controlling possessions from the perimeter. Reese's game is built much more around rebounding, physicality, second chances, and interior activity. They do not have to be evaluated using identical statistical categories, because they do different things, but they should be evaluated using equally serious standards. If one player shoots poorly, say it. If one player changes the game with rebounding, say it. If somebody gets blocked 3 times, do not tell viewers defense had nothing to do with it. If a star makes a spectacular play, do not spend the next 30 seconds desperately redirecting the conversation toward somebody else. The audience is watching too. They know what they saw. And the fastest way to lose credibility is to describe a completely different game than the one sitting on everybody's television.
Hey, man, this might be the greatest meme ever right here, dog. I can't hold you. I can't hold you, man. I was looking at this last night. I said, dog, just watch how she walked by. Just diabolical work. Watch this. Look at this. Man, this is hilarious, man. This is hilarious. My goodness.
And then, because sports social media has absolutely no mercy, the memes arrive. That moment of Clark walking by became funny to people because it fit the entire emotional temperature of the night. The game had missed layups, physical contact, officiating arguments, commentary arguments, and 2 fan bases prepared to analyze every frame like the Zapruder film. That is what this rivalry has become. A normal possession lasts 8 seconds. The internet discussion lasts 2 days. And sometimes the meme ends up reaching more people than the actual highlight. But underneath all the jokes is a serious lesson for the league. The WNBA has exactly what sports organizations spend decades trying to manufacture: characters people care about, rival fan bases, arguments that continue after the final buzzer, and games where viewers arrive already emotionally invested. You do not need to overproduce that. You do not need to tell people who had a great game when they can see the box score. You do not need to shield popular players from criticism. You definitely do not need commentators sounding like defense attorneys every time somebody misses at the rim. Just let the performances breathe. Let Reese be a monster rebounder who has to improve her finishing. Let Clark be a generational passer who can still have ugly possessions. Let Gray steal the spotlight when she earns it. Let Mitchell get her credit when she catches fire. Let Boston be evaluated on what she actually does. That is how you turn casual viewers into knowledgeable fans, instead of recruiting them into permanent player war camps. Because once every broadcast becomes our player versus your player, nobody is even talking about basketball anymore. They are arguing about narratives.
They get the rebound or whatnot. Like, I don't know what Angel was on, but she got to calm it down, man. She done went to the school of hard knocks with Dejanay Character. Come on, man. She done learned defensive plays from Dejanay Character. What's going on, man? What's going on? Your hair is turning blonde just like her. You got to relax. But no, I had to bring this up, man, because this had me dying laughing this morning, dog. There's no way y'all was sitting here trying to cover for Angel Reese not performing well.
And that is where I land on this entire thing. There were legitimate reasons to praise Angel Reese. There were legitimate reasons to criticize Angel Reese. There were legitimate reasons for Indiana fans to question parts of the officiating. And there were also moments where slow-motion internet analysis can make routine physical basketball look more intentional than we can actually establish from a clip. All of those ideas can coexist. What cannot coexist is demanding serious coverage while refusing to describe obvious shortcomings. If a player is missing close-range opportunities, analysts should say she is struggling to finish, then explain why. Maybe the footwork is rushed. Maybe she is anticipating contact. Maybe she is releasing the ball too low. Maybe the defender is altering the attempt. That is analysis. Sometimes the basket is too open might make sense for a perimeter shooter who has so much time that her normal rhythm disappears. Players have talked about that phenomenon forever. At the rim, after you have already created the position you wanted, the explanation gets a lot harder to sell. And that is why the line was so funny. It sounded less like basketball analysis and more like somebody searching for any available explanation that did not require saying the simple sentence, "Angel Reese was missing shots she should make." There is no shame in that sentence. Every great player has nights like that. What matters is what happens afterward. Does she adjust? Does she finish stronger? Does she improve the touch? Does she keep affecting the game when the scoring is not there? Those are the questions worth asking. And if we are going to talk about double standards, then apply that same test to everybody. When Caitlin Clark plays poorly, criticize her. When Angel Reese plays poorly, criticize her. When either one plays brilliantly, give her the credit. When somebody like Alicia Gray is actually having the performance of the night, stop forcing the conversation back toward the two names that generate the easiest engagement. The league is better when the game determines the storyline instead of the storyline determining how the game gets described. So you tell me which side you are on. Was that halftime commentary just analysts trying to find the positives in Angel Reese's game, or did the two open at the rim explanation expose a real double standard in how certain stars are covered? Drop your choice in the comments, hit the like button if you enjoyed the breakdown, subscribe if you want more WNBA commentary like this, and I'll catch you on the next one.